Well, good morning, and I hope everyone's well rested. Councilmember Fry, we may have to update that video with your flag suit. We'll call the meeting to order, and with us this morning is Christian Hallberg from Pathway Church that's going to provide an invocation, and following that invocation we'll have a Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you all to join us for both of those. If we could have Christian come up. Good morning.
I'd like to start us off with a word from Jeremiah in the Bible. And it tells us this. It says, "Build homes and plan to stay. Plant gardens and eat the food they produce. Marry and have children, then find spouses for them so that you may have many grandchildren. Multiply, do not dwindle away. And work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you. Pray to the Lord for it, for its welfare will determine your welfare." Please bow with me and let's pray. God, we come to you this morning and we pray for the city of Wichita. God, we ask for its prosperity, Lord, that this would be a place that generation after generation would want to come and live and do business and, Lord, raise their children in this place. God, we pray for the men and women in this council this morning, Lord, that you would give them wisdom, insight, and perception, God, to make that a reality for us. We seek all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Christian, thank you. Appreciate you being here. We have the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 27th, 2019. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, I would move that we approve those meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Looks like we have several proclamations this morning. First proclamation this morning is for suicide prevention awareness. If we could have Gayla Kelly and is it Shari Michael with the foundation, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Out of the Darkness, and anyone else that you'd like to bring. Good morning. The proclamation for you this morning from the city of Wichita. Whereas September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month and is intended to help promote awareness of suicide prevention resources available in our communities. Our goal is to spread awareness of what is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. and to help ensure that mental health is looked upon in equal importance to physical health and to bring hope to those affected by suicide. And whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, and or background. And whereas according to the CDC, each year more than 44,000 people die by suicide in the United States. In 2018, Kansas had 514 suicides, ranking us the 15th in the nation for suicide deaths. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 15 to 44. And whereas national organizations like the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and local organizations like the National Alliance of Mental Illness, known as NAMI, and ComCare are on the front lines of battle that many still refuse to discuss in public. And whereas every member of our community should understand that we are each fighting our own battles and that we encourage everyone to take the time to reach out and check on the well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors. Often a friendly phone call, message, handshake, or hug can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, the mayor of the city of Wichita, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim Saturday, September 21st, 2019 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Day in the city of Wichita and encourage all citizens to join the fight to help stop suicide and the stigma around mental illness. And we'll present that to you.
Thank you so much.
Whoever would like to take a moment.
And unfortunately, this proclamation says the numbers are 44,000. They have continued to rise. The most recent is over 47,000. So these numbers are increasing. So it's very important to try to get out there, spread the information about suicide prevention and awareness. So we do invite all of you to spread the information about the walk. Our walk will help fund research programs for suicide prevention programs in the Wichita and Sedgwick County area and all of Kansas. It's September 21st at Riverside Park. You can go on www.afsp.org/Wichita to register and help us get the information out there to help save a life. You never know, you can touch one person and save a life. So join us on this day. I'm going to let Sherry say something real quick.
Hi, I'm Sherry Michael, and I lost my son, Thaddeus, February 15, 2018, to suicide. Losing someone to suicide is a complicated grief, and it's essential to get help. There are support groups all around Kansas, and there's one in Wichita that meets every Monday. On afsp.org, they have resources available to put you in touch with support groups in this area. Suicide is a difficult topic to discuss, but it's essential that we start talking to our loved ones about it. We didn't realize what we were seeing were the signs of suicide. And it is important for us to make everyone aware of those signs. There are 5 things that you should have a conversation with someone who's in crisis. You need to ask them straight up if they're having thoughts of killing themselves. It's a very difficult conversation to have, but it's an essential one. You need to know that you cannot help them alone. That's why we have the 741-741 text line, and we have the 1-800 hotline number. And you need to encourage them to get help. You need to let other family members know that they are in crisis. Let their friends know that they're in crisis so that they can check on them and listen to what's going on in their lives. Feel supported. Thank you very much for your time. And I appreciate Mayor Longwell. Thank you very much for seeing the importance in this.
You're very welcome.
For all your support.
Thank you. We appreciate the work that you both are doing. Our next proclamation is for Garton Music's 50th anniversary celebration. If we can have those with Garton Music. Anyone here? Is it Amy, Cindy, and Michael Houston? Thought maybe you'd bring some instruments and play.
Didn't. Should have brought you one,
I can't play.
but we can help you.
You could. A proclamation from the City of Wichita, whereas for 50 years, Garton's Music has been providing musical instruments and instruction to the residents of Wichita and the surrounding communities. And whereas Garton's Music has provided musical instruments ranging in size from the piccolo to the grand piano to these residents. And whereas Garton's Music hires over 23 university-trained and/or professional music instructors annually with multiple years of teaching experience. And whereas Garton's Music provides more than 15,000 music lessons annually to students of all ages. And whereas Garton's Music has given away hundreds of lessons for school and charitable organizations, fundraising activities, and whereas students at Garton's Music find that the training received there has prepared some for music degrees, some to become professional music instructors, many to become performers, and others who have found music to be an outlet for their musical creativity. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, the mayor of the city of Wichita, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim September 6, 2019 as Garton's Music's 50th anniversary celebration day in the city of Wichita, and encourage all citizens to applaud Garton's Music's successful implementation of being a creative musical treasure available to all of our residents, and join us in celebrating their noteworthy accomplishment and being with us for the last 50 years. Congratulations, that's outstanding.
Very much.
Thank you, we'll let you have the podium.
My parents started our company 50 years ago, and our business has evolved in a lot of ways since then. But I think my husband and my daughter and I all feel privileged to be in the music business, because one of the great things about making music is that it's really good for us. Research has been done for many years about the benefits that we get from making music, even when we just play for our own enjoyment. So the other great thing about music is you're never too old to learn. And so we just like to leave you with those two thoughts, is that making music is good for us no matter what age we are, and you're never too old to get started. So thank you very much. We appreciate this, and we're looking forward to celebrating more years in the music business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have to pay Megan more when she gets on TV? It's like a game show. Our next proclamation is for the Adrian Journey to Greatness Cultural Awareness Program from Holy Savior of Denise Sherman and Dr. Delia Shropshire are here. How close did I get? Shropshire?
Closer than Adinkra.
Thank you, Councilmember Fry. I think you should come down and read this.
No, I want to hear you. I
All
did
right.
it already.
The proclamation from the City of Wichita. Whereas grassroots community education out of a common desire to design and create cultural awareness programming for the benefit of the community. And whereas a strategic partnership has been developed to facilitate an enriching, culturally appropriate and positive learning experience designed to enhance students' personal, social, and academic outcomes. And whereas the Ubuntu Village Saturday School, through the partnership of the Holy Savior Catholic Academy and the Kansas African American Museum, expand educational and cultural awareness programming for students to experience curricular activities, self-discovery of each individual's greatness through the African and African American art, music, history, and language. And whereas the Adinkra Journey to Greatness Cultural Awareness Program will engage African American and other diverse learners in discovering and manifesting their greatness by impacting the community and society beyond. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, the mayor of the city of Wichita, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim August 24th, 2019 as what, Councilmember Fry?
Adinkra.
Journey to Greatness Cultural Awareness Program. Very nice. In the City of Wichita, to encourage all citizens to seek better understanding and cultural awareness for the betterment of self, others, and our community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll let you have that.
You did an excellent job. I'm Denise Sherman with the Kansas African American Museum, and I have with me Dr. Delia Shropshire, who is the president of the Holy Savior Catholic Academy. Come on up and join me. And we are just excited about this partnership that we are doing in the community for the Adinkra Journey to Greatness program. Adinkra means greatness and royalty, and this program will allow us to do cultural awareness programming specifically for students in our community, as well as other learners who would like to learn more about themselves through the cultural awareness provided at the Kansas African American Museum and the Ubuntu Village Saturday School that is provided by Holy Savior Catholic Church. And we are starting this program officially this Saturday, September the 7th, and it will be held monthly at the Kansas African American Museum, but the Ubuntu Village Saturday School goes on weekly. And so I'm going to have Dr. Shropshire share a little bit more about that, but understanding that it is for the development of personal, social responsibility, academic, and leadership in our community. And we do this by using the historical, artistic, language, and music in the African American culture, and African culture.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Longwell. And we are just really excited about this partnership. Nelson Mandela in his inaugural speech said, Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate, but we are powerful beyond measure. And that's one of the reasons why we developed Adinkra to help children to develop their greatness, because once they know how wonderful, how beautifully and wonderfully made they are, they can excel in whatever areas are presented to them. So Ubuntu Village Saturday School started about 5 years ago, and it's a community opportunity for people to come from the community to Holy Savior Catholic Academy and to participate in cultural enrichment. Out of that has grown this partnership of Adinkra. And so we've extended it out even further. And so we have our partnership with TCAM, and one Saturday a month, we will actually have our Saturday school at the Kansas African Museum. And so the children will also become members of the African American Museum. They can participate in events outside of our partnership. And then on the remaining Saturdays, they'll be housed at Holy Savior Catholic Academy in our new building, I might say, in case you didn't know. So, what a wonderful opportunity for us. We are so appreciative and excited for students to learn over this 3-year program. First year covering the diaspora, second year journey through Kansas, and then the third year journey to self. So it is a 3-year program. Thank you.
And we invite you all to come and visit with us as well to find out more about the Saturday program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good stuff. National Clinical Nurse Specialist Week of Dr. Carla Lee and Judy Dushek. You don't have Judy here. You're on your own. All right, you'll handle it. I'm sure you can handle it, Doctor. The proclamation reads, whereas clinical nurse specialists serve as frontline healthcare providers for patients in our city and state, and whereas clinical nurse specialists are crucial to the implementation of evidence-based nursing practice and crucial to patient safety and the care of critically ill patients. And whereas clinical nurse specialists are highly skilled practitioners with advanced education and clinical training building upon their initial registered nurse preparation. And whereas clinical nurse specialists reduce the cost of health care, and whereas Wichita Council is proud to recognize and honor the service of clinical nurse specialists to our city. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby recognize September 1st through the 7th, 2019 as National Clinical Nurse Specialist Week in recognition of the countless contributions the clinical specialists have made over the last 60 years and will continue to make to the health and well-being of the citizens of our city. I'll let you share the podium.
Thank you, Mayor Longwell. They were birthed here in Wichita, Kansas. The original research study was conducted in 1969, and we now have over 500 clinical nurse specialists in the state. And usually for critical care, if there's such a unit, at least one critical care nurse is assigned to that unit to attend to severe critical crisis and good planning for that. We have over 65,000 registered nurses now in Kansas, and both hospitals, Wesley, HCA, and St. Francis utilize them. So wish to share that. On September 21st will be a conference held here at St. Francis in honor of this work, and wish to share that also. If you need more information about what we do, nursingworld.org is the contact on web.
Thank you, Dr. Madam Clerk, you want to call the next item?
Yes, Mayor, the first speaker canceled this morning. The second speaker is Ben Lee regarding gangs, guns, and violence.
Okay. Is Ben Lee here? Looks like Ben Lee did not make it. One last time, no Ben Lee. All right, Madam Clerk, you want to call the next item?
Consent agenda items 1 through 15.
Any items that need to be pulled for discussion or clarification? Seeing none, I move that we approve the consent agenda items 1 through 15.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing and issuance of industrial revenue bonds, BG Products.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the item before you today is a request for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds for BG Products Incorporated. BG Products was founded in Wichita in 1971. It is a manufacturer of lubrication and cleaning products for the automotive industry. It purchased the former sunflower oil and grease facility, which is located at 701 and 740 South Wichita. This is immediately south of Kellogg on the east side of the river. The area outlined in red is all of the property that is currently owned by BG Products south of Kellogg. The company has invested heavily over the years in research and development of new products and refined existing lines as engines have become more sophisticated. Automotive products and services have been developed for fuel systems, engines, transmissions, brakes, power steering, and climate control systems. The company also provides extensive training for service advisors and technicians. The company had an auto lab and a research and development lab that were outdated and inefficient. During training sessions, the auto lab had to be shut down so they could use it for demonstrations, and the research and development lab was too small to continue to grow existing lines. The classrooms were limiting the class sizes because they were very small, so the company decided to demolish 2 existing structures and replace them with a new 34,000 square foot expansion. The area outlined in blue here represent the 2 buildings that were demolished. These are the actual pictures of the buildings that were demolished, and this was the automotive lab that they had. So the expansion includes new larger classrooms, a larger auto lab, a dedicated demonstration room, offices for engineers, increased research and development lab space, and a larger break room space for training sessions. This area you can see in black and white is where the 34,000 square foot expansion was built. And these are some of the images of the actual expansion itself. You can see the lab there on the right is much larger and updated than what was previously there. You can see a much larger classroom on the left there. In September of 2017, the City Council approved a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds. At the time, the company had 174 employees, and as projected as part of this expansion, it would add at least 11 new employees at an average annual salary in excess of $70,000 a year and invest approximately $12 million in capital investment. The company qualifies for an 83% property tax abatement on a 5+5 year basis as part of this expansion. The value of the 83% tax abatement, assuming that the $12 million is appraised at 80% of its value, would be $56,865 for the city and a little over $204,000 for all taxing jurisdictions. BG Products does pay in excess of $72,000 a year in property tax annually. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.67 to 1 for the city, and 1.30 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.53 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is the staff recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $12 million for BG Products Incorporated, and authorize the necessary signatures. Ron Garcia, who is the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Financial Officer for BG Products, is here and can answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Any questions for Tim? as he quickly marched away. You didn't even give us a chance. We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing no one, we'll bring discussion back to the bench, and I will hand this off to Councilmember Clendenin. But first, just want to say thank you for investing in our community. I'm familiar with this company on a variety of different levels, very fond of them investing in Wichita and growing their business, and they could be anywhere, certainly in the Midwest, certainly anywhere in the country, and they've chosen Wichita even though we have pretty tough guidelines, and we're one of the few communities that require a return on investment, but appreciate what you do for Wichita. Councilmember Clendenin, I know you're familiar with them too. We'll turn this over to you.
Not too much more to say beyond that. I'd like to echo your words, Mayor. Did get a chance before the expansion to go see the need, and there was definitely a great need for the expansion. And they plan on bringing hundreds of people into Wichita for training every year from all over the world, actually. So this is an amazing project. Looking forward to continuing BG's long-standing here in the community. So that being said, I want to move that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in the amount not to exceed $12 million for BG Products, Inc., and authorize the necessary signatures.
And I will second that and add that they are a very slick company in a good way. I knew Bob would enjoy that. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Extension of the project commencement deadline for Parcel A of the Uptown Landing Project.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. The item before you today is a request to extend the deadline for the second phase of Uptown Landing's development. The development agreement was originally approved in May of 2017, at which time the developer agreed to purchase a little over 4.5 acres from the city for about $300,000 to invest a minimum of $25 million into that project. That included a minimum of 176 apartment units and at least 15,000 square feet of commercial space, as well as agreeing to a maintenance agreement for the public space that was developed in the previous TIF project that occurred there. With that, the developer did purchase that property, and they completed the construction on Parcel B, which is the one at Douglas and Rutan, with their first phase of the apartment complex. And then the next phase, which they're asking for the extension today, would be to begin the construction on Parcel A, which is just north of that. On here you can see the map where Parcel B is at Douglas and Rutan, where Parcel A, which we're talking about today, is at Victor Place and Rutan. And this is a site plan that was originally adopted with the development agreement. And part of the reason the developers request the extension is they're working to acquire the rest of that property to the west of that site plan to extend all the way to Hillside. And so they've asked for additional time to acquire that property, as well as to redo the site plan and the overall construction plans for that project to expand and enhance that project and go ahead and complete that full block of construction. And so, as stated, they've completed with that Parcel B 51 high-end unit apartments, as well as approximately 19,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor of that building. This is the photo of the completed building there with that. And Parcel A, as discussed with that site plan, does include the fact that they'd still have an additional 125 units to construct in that, as well as they have proposed a new completion date of July 31st of 2021. That would be basically keeping with our current development agreement. That'd be 12 months from when they break ground until when they complete the project. And the request is to move that commencement deadline to July 31st of 2020, which would be next year. And so this is still the concept design that we have. They're currently in the process of working on the construction site plans for that parcel A. But this is the way the original was proposed, and it would be more or less just continued to the west to complete that project. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Any questions? Yeah, Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. One quick question.
Yes, sir.
As they're looking at phase 2, is there any work on parking?
I believe that's part of why he wants to acquire that extra land, is to be able to do additional parking to accommodate that, yes.
Okay, because that was the biggest complaint I've heard from the neighborhood is the parking.
Yeah, that's one of his major concerns as well.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And this is in Councilmember Johnson's district.
Mm-hmm.
We'll let you take it.
All right, thanks, Mayor. I would move that we approve an extension of the project commencement deadline for parcel A of the Uptown Landing project.
Second. We have a motion and a second to extend the deadline. Any other questions, discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Resolution considering the expansion of the Union Station redevelopment district.
Good morning, Mark Elder again. The Union Station Redevelopment District was originally established in 2014 as part of a redevelopment project for the original Union Station complex in downtown. And originally at that time, the development was expected to occur within 3 phases. They've completed the first phase and are getting close to completion of that second phase. What they're looking at today is they've recently acquired the parcels in red that they've asked to go ahead and include into the redevelopment district, which that requires is to go as an expansion of the redevelopment district to include those parcels. The expansion allows for any of those TIF eligible expenses to be reimbursed as long as they're identified in a project plan. This expanded district is approximately half an acre. And it does take those project areas from what's currently 3 project areas to 4, but it includes 40,000 square feet of both rehabilitation and expansion. They're taking the existing ice house building and expanding that to a total of 40,000 square feet, with the estimated construction budget of just that project of $8.7 million. The overall redevelopment budget for the entire district is over $50 million. This project, which is just for information this time, we're still working on an actual project plan, since this is just a request to expand the district, but they'd be looking at approximately $300,000 worth of eligible expenses within this expanded area. Here are some renderings the developer has provided for the ice house building that includes both, you can see the original building as well as the new construction to create that entire 40,000 square feet. And with this, the next step would be to actually have a public hearing on this expansion for the district, which would be October 8th of this year. Following that public hearing, there is a 30-day period in which Sedgwick County or USD 259 could make an action of consideration whether there's an impact on that district, to which time they can veto it. So we wait 30 days to see if there's any action by either of those districts before the expansion is fully adopted. Following that 30-day period is when we can go through the rest of this process. We would then bring forward a project plan that lays out in a lot greater detail the proposal for this project area, as well as a development agreement. And as previously stated, we would require a project plan to be adopted for this in order for any reimbursement on those improvements to happen within those expanded boundaries, as well as having that adopted development agreement in place for that reimbursement. This project is a pay-as-you-go project, so whatever revenue is generated is what's reimbursed. The city hasn't issued any bonds for the payment of that project. There's a representative from the developer in this at the meeting. If you have any questions, I stand for those.
It's a lot of information for just setting a public hearing.
Just like to make sure any answers can be provided we have.
We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this setting a public hearing? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Councilmember Johnson,
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that we take the staff's recommended action.
second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote.
Vice Mayor, would you cast your vote, please?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Okay. You want to tell me how you?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, call the next item.
Petition to renovate building facade at 500 South Topeka.
Good morning. This is my last item for you all this morning. This project is the part of the redevelopment of the 500 South Topeka, which is the old Topeka Street Fire Station. This project went through an RFP and is under redevelopment right now by the group that's called Fireworks. They're redeveloping this into a shared office and makerspace. Their overall project is a minimum of $1 million, and today they're requesting the facade improvement loan for $200,000 to help with going ahead and replacing and restoring the windows that are there. The original concept, they were hoping that they could just do kind of just patchwork and seal up the windows that were there. As they got into the project, they realized that there's a little more work, and to really make that building efficient and attractive to new tenants, they're looking at going ahead and doing the replacement on all those windows. And so with that, it does include the windows and doors, the power washing, the additional work they have to do to bring that building up to code. This is the location here right on the southeast corner of Topeka and Lewis Street. The original building as it is today, you can see that they have the original roll-up doors right now, which will be removed and actually incorporated within the building for some demising walls, and then they'll be replacing those doors with basically kind of a replica, but a fixed wall, so to speak, that will be used as far as those features. And then here's the north face of that building. Again, you can see the stone and everything would be cleaned up, as well as the replacement of those windows that will brighten up that entrance to the building. This is a rendering of what those developers are proposing for that. Again, you can see it's brighter, as well as those roll-up doors have been replaced with a glass replica type door, but it's a fixed wall on that. With this, the estimated project costs are $175,000. When you add in the city's admin fee as well as financing costs, it brings the total to $200,000, but this project is eligible for $30,000 in the facade improvement grant, which would make the maximum assessment $170,000. And with that, when the project, so the developer will be financing these improvements up front and then be requesting reimbursement when the project's done in order to protect the city. And then the further step would be that special assessments would be spread against the property when the project's completed. And with that, they'd be the traditional 15-year bonds with those interest rates set by the bond sale. And again, the developer would carry those costs until the special assessments are ready to be placed on the property. For this project, the resolution would set the public hearing for September 17th of this year for consideration of that project and setting the maximum assessment ordinance for that. And again, with the completion of those projects, the final assessment amount would be set, and we'd bring back to the council if it's less than the maximum that we're adopting today. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to clarify, whenever we talk about the reimbursement by the bonds, is that interest rate, is that a pass-through, or do we put an administrative fee on that?
Correct. There's two parts. The administrative fee is the city's cost of processing that project, and then the financing cost would include the finance department's cost for issuing those bonds, but then any of the principal and those costs and any interest payments on the bonds are paid by the property owner. There's no, all the city's costs are passed on to that project, and we don't have.
But there's no markup on the interest rate?
Correct. They are packaged with all the other special assessment bonds and then put out to the market for that.
But when we do a normal special assessment, like on a new development or something like that, we do hedge that interest rate, correct?
I'd have to defer a little bit to
Just trying to clarify that we're doing it the same way.
Mayor, members of council, yes, we are. The interest rate, we don't change the interest rate, but as Mark said, we do have administrative costs that are passed on and rolled into the cost of the project. So the property owner is paying those administrative costs plus the interest rate and the principal.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And again, Councilmember Johnson, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that we take the staff's recommended action.
And I will second that, and looking forward to this building coming back to life because we've been working on this for quite some time. It's going to be a gorgeous building, so love the investment. If there's no other discussion, cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. I'm sure we had to pay Mark extra today for all of that TV time. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Ordinances amending chapters 11 and 9 of the Code of the City of Wichita pertaining to official use of golf carts, obedience to police, driver's licenses, window tinting, colored lights for transportation network companies, railroad equipment, and penalty on speeding.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council. My name is Jan Jarman. I'm with the Law Department. I'm actually here with Deputy Chief Hatter, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Wichita Police Department today. Every year, we have a number of ordinances or statutes that are changed with the state, and a lot of them take effect on July 1st. And that causes me to look at what needs to be changed in the city in order to comply with the state law. And when I do that, I take a look at all of the ordinances to see if any updates need to be done. So that's why we're here today. These changes, most of them happened on July 1st, and then I noticed some other updates we're going to make. We're also here because the Wichita Police Department started a new program, a community watch program along the Riverway. And in order to use the golf carts along the river, we needed an update to that ordinance as well. All right, so the first ordinance the city, that the police department seeks to change has to do with obedience to police. One thing that was noticed is our penalty for evade elude is actually a little bit lower than the state law. And we've had a problem with evade eludes in this city leading to tragedy. And we should at least be in compliance with state law. So to that end, we seek to change the penalty to a Class B misdemeanor, which is a maximum penalty of 6 months in jail for a first offense, and an A misdemeanor, which is a penalty of 12 months in jail for a second offense. And that matches right along with state law now. Another issue that happened, we have an ordinance in the city of Wichita that says it's illegal to disobey a command of a police officer. And one way that is used often is when the police try to block the roadway with their vehicle and when to make a scene safer, to make an accident scene safer, a crime scene safer so cars don't go into that area. The judges have ruled that to follow the ordinance exactly, the officer has to be in the car. But there aren't enough officers to keep them with the car. So we added a second section to the obedience to police that says if the police block off a street with their car or with traffic cones, and if their car has its emergency lights on or hazards on, that the public would not be allowed to go into the oncoming lane of traffic, go around and try to go into that accident scene. So it follows, it's just a second section to the same ordinance we've had that'll make it easier to prosecute that situation. Window tinting has been different in the city of Wichita. It's always been, here our ordinance says that if you can't see clearly into the car, then it's a violation of our window tinting ordinance. But state law has an exact percentage. And I think that might cause some issue with the public not knowing which you should follow. And the city of Wichita just invested, the police department did, in a number of, I call them tintometers, they're tint readers. So it'll be easy for the police to be able to read what your tint level is in your vehicle. So this ordinance will make it exactly in line with state law that says what your tint level may or may not be in your vehicle. There were also some changes to state law in the area of window tinting, they allow some of the clear tinting now. They make it specific that you can't tint your headlights, and that the police can tint their vehicles. So it's an exception, and that's all in state law, and we're just picking up that portion of state law.
Can you clarify, is the city of Wichita, are we less restrictive or more restrictive than the state?
Right now, we're just different. I would say we are similar, only we don't offer a percentage. It's literally eyeballing it. If you can't make out the shapes in the vehicle, then in city law, that's all it takes. You don't have to have a tint reading. But as to what that percentage is, I don't even know. And this just makes it an absolute percentage. So the prosecutor will have to bring into court an officer who can testify that they ran the tintometer and have a percentage on it.
Councilmember Johnson had a question.
Thanks, Mayor. I was going to wait to the end, but since you brought it up, do you know what the state tint percentage is?
I think 35%.
Is that for all windows or front windows and back?
It's front, side wing, and rear.
Okay, but your rear,
So basically,
your rear has to be 35, or it can be less than that?
it can be less than that. Well, I'm sorry. You have to at least be 35%. Yes, I have it.
Yeah, none of the windows can be darker, right?
That's going to be expensive. There's a lot of people who used to have the back windows like 20% in the front, 35. If they all have to be 35, that's...
Well, it's
No, they can be less.
They can be less. I'm sorry, they can be less. And by state law, that's already the law. I mean, if you have a car that's licensed in the state of Kansas, this doesn't change anything for any driver. It just says that when you come into Wichita, we're not going to be stricter. I guess I did answer the first question. We're not going to be any stricter now than the state. Uber and Lyft are the next ordinance, transportation network contractors, and those are the two that I can think of. And they've actually enacted a law in the state that says you can have colored lights on your dashboard now. You might have seen them, they're already using them in Wichita. They have pink ones and green ones. And if the way our ordinance currently reads, you're not really allowed to have those on your dashboard. So this ordinance now allows Uber and Lyft drivers and whatever brand exists out there to put those lights on their dashboard. Railroad equipment, that was a small change to state statute. Just you have to yield to a train, but you also now need to yield to any equipment that's actually on the track. And so this ordinance just picks up that language and adds it to our ordinance, that it's not talking about the trucks that are off track, but if it's on track and it signals, then you need to yield to it, which hopefully people do anyway. When we were looking through our ordinances, we noticed that somehow speeding became a misdemeanor, and that was never the intent of anyone. It's been there quite a while. So we fixed, and it's not written that way throughout the entire ordinance. It was just one section where we caught it, so we fixed that. Speeding is an infraction. It's an infraction at the state level. It should be an infraction at the city level. So this is just a cleanup of that. Driver's license changed this year as well. In state law, it is now illegal. You must present your driver's license to the officer. The way the wording was written, you just had to display it. So there were some people who would leave their windows closed, press their license up against the window, and never unroll their window. Some people think that the reason they do that is to avoid officers detecting the odor of alcohol. So now the state law says not only do you have to put it up to your window, you have to actually unroll your window and hand the license over to the officer. While we were in the license area making that change to be consistent with state law, we went ahead and added the rest of the language to state law regarding displaying driver's licenses. And we also changed the penalty to coincide with state law. So now, if you don't have a driver's license at all, one doesn't exist under your name, it is still a Class B misdemeanor to drive without having a driver's license at all. If you do have a driver's license and you just didn't bring it with you, we've added that into the ordinance as well. And that is a Class C misdemeanor according to state law, which means you don't get, if you're convicted of that, you don't get fingerprinted for that. You would if you were convicted of a Class B misdemeanor. So we have different levels now of not having one at all versus not displaying one. And to avoid confusion for officers and prosecutors, we went ahead and added the language into the ordinance on who has to have a driver's license, and this is already in state law, regarding accepting foreign driver's licenses and when that should happen. So if you're driving on an out-of-state driver's license, or if you're driving on a driver's license from another country, or if you're from a country that doesn't have a license, there are exceptions where the police would acknowledge those licenses, and all of that has been in state law for a very long time. But while we were cleaning up the ordinance, we went ahead and added that. So the changes are adding the new sections that the state added this year, adding the rest of the state statute into our ordinance, so the officers and prosecutors are aware of that. Sorry, I'll let you look at that. And that has to do with the foreign driver's license. State law also changed, another reason we were looking at this ordinance, state law also changed motorcycle licenses. They used to have an exception in state law that if you were driving on a temporary tag, then you didn't have to have a motorcycle license. The state law changed that and said, if you're driving a motorcycle, you need to have a motorcycle license. So we're picking up that ordinance as well so we can enforce that law. City golf carts in parks, this has to do with the new program the Wichita Police Department is working along our rivers and parkways, where we have the volunteers who are, some of them will be driving golf carts. Some of them will use bicycles, some of them will walk, but we want them to be able to use bicycles along the parks. It would also allow the chief of police or the director of parks to allow motor vehicles on that pathway for any other reason. So if an emergency vehicle needed to get down to the bridge to help someone under the bridge, then you'd be allowed to use a motor vehicle to get down there. Or if you had an ATV or something that you were patrolling that area for some reason, it would allow you to go down there in a way that our ordinance has never allowed us to do before. And that is the number of ordinances that we are presenting today for traffic. And I thank you for your time, and I recommend that we place this on first reading and authorize the necessary signatures.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson?
Thanks, Mayor. So one follow-up on the driver's license, and I know it's state law, but if someone is afraid of an officer and that officer says, I want to see your driver's license, and they put it on the window because they don't want to roll down the window, again, being afraid, that's a ticketable offense.
It is.
Okay.
Any other questions? We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And I can't imagine why we wouldn't want to be aligned with state law at this point in time. So, Councilmember Claycomb?
I just want to verify one thing on the driver's license. So we are putting in there if you have a foreign driver's license, that is acceptable. It is an acceptable driver's license.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
As long as it's current, I'm sure.
Yes. Or if you come from a country where you aren't required to have one, it would be acceptable for a time period as well.
And do we have some sort of, we have a list of those countries, or how would we know that? How would police know that?
We don't have a list. We can address that. We can put that, when this goes out, we can put it in a training bulletin.
Okay. Thank you.
That would seem appropriate. Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, I would move that we place this ordinance on first reading and authorize all necessary signatures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Lease agreement with the Wichita Rowing Association for a portion of South Riverside Park.
Mayor Longwell and City Council members, my name is Gentry Thiessen, and I'm here to present to you the lease agreement with the Wichita Rowing Association for a portion of South Riverside Park. So in 2012, the city first leased a portion of the park to the Wichita Rowing Association for a temporary storage facility for their rowing equipment. It was a total of 3,640 square feet. Then in 2016, the WRA proposed the construction of a permanent and longer-term lease storage facility. It was unanimously supported by the park board and staff, and the building design was supported by the district advisory board and the design council. They requested that the city sponsor the grant applications to round off their funding to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. While the grant application was not rewarded, the Wichita Rowing Association plans to raise the remainder of the funds for the construction. So this slide will show you the location. The footprint of the building will remain the same as it currently exists, which is slightly smaller than what's depicted on this map. Only one tree will have to be removed, and the Park and Recreation, Forestry Division, and Maintenance will be adding more trees around the building. There is also an area of the parking lot that will serve as additional storage, as you can see on the screen. And this is the proposed design for the building. The terms of the contract state that it will be for 25 years with a 10-year renewal upon completion of the 25 years. Wichita Rowing Association will pay for the construction, maintenance, operation, and use of the facility, and all associated costs, including utilities. The city will be advised of the progress of the planning and construction, as well as being afforded the opportunity to provide input and assistance. Upon termination of the agreement, all of the improvements made to the leased property, including any building, structure, or parking lot, will become property of the city. As mentioned, all costs will fall to the Wichita Rowing Association. They will pay $1 per year for each year during the term, and no costs will be incurred by the city for this lease. The lease agreement was written and approved as to form by the law department, and it's recommended that City Council approve the contract and authorize the necessary signatures. I would like to invite Jay Pfeiffer, President of the Wichita Rowing Association, for any comment. Then he and I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Council members. This has been an ongoing project with the Park Board, and we've worked hard to get this together and get this to this point. Excuse me. We first started this project when we moved from working with the city directly to get a permanent place for our facility when we moved from the Coke Boathouse. And after that, BG, who was here earlier, was kind enough to allow us some land there that and building space that we operated out of for a number of years. And WSU continues to have some land there and some of their equipment stored there now. But this gets us back to the Little River, which is where WRA started in 1974. We've been rowing on that river ever since, and it is always rowable. And unless the flow rates are too high, but almost always rowable, and the wind doesn't affect us there. So we're looking forward to completion of this project. One clarification, we do have the funds on hand. We can start building immediately. And so as soon as we can get this approved, we can move forward and hope to have a new boathouse for our program and community outreach. We currently have masters rowing and high school rowers rowing through the facility. So we hope to be able to have that in place for the spring rowing season, and hope for your support in this project.
Thank you. Councilmember Clayco?
I just have a question. Where are we in terms of what the building will look like? I know we've seen renderings of those. Where are we at in that process?
Yes, I do have some renderings. I don't have a complete set, but I could give them to the council.
They're the ones that we've seen
Yes,
in the
they
past.
are.
No changes to
No
those?
changes.
Okay, thank you.
It's a building with two cupolas, stone facade, approximately 4 feet up, and the dimensions are 54 by 72 foot building with a porch off to the side.
Thank you. Thanks.
No other questions? We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And we'll turn this over to Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you. This is a a really exciting project, and I know one that you guys have been working on for a really long time, and appreciate the tenacity that you've shown with this, because I know it has taken a lot of effort on the Wichita Rowing Association's part. So I'd like to move that the City Council approve the contract and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please. Thank you.
Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Fiscal Agent Agreement.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. Sean Henning, Director of Finance. The item before you this morning is a WAMPO Fiscal Agent Agreement. The Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization is an independent governmental agency that's responsible for transportation planning process here in the metropolitan area. WAMPO is primarily funded with federal funds along with member city contributions. The City of Wichita serves as the largest member jurisdiction, and it's been proposed that the city serve as the fiscal agent for WAMPO. And in that capacity, the city would provide necessary funding to provide cash funding on an interim basis as needed, up to 25% of WAMPO's annual budget. As part of this, the city will receive monthly statements and supporting documentation regarding their cash balances and operations to determine if amounts are due to or from WAMPO and whether those additional funds are needed. WAMPO will be charged interest by the city for the outstanding amount due on the cash balance, and that will be assessed and reviewed on a monthly basis based on the supporting documentation. At this time, the recommended action is to approve the contract for fiscal agent services and authorize the necessary agreements. I'll also mention that WAMPO approved this agreement at their meeting on August 27th. So I'd stand for any questions you might have. And Phil Nelson from WAMPO is also here.
So I know we have several council members that serve on that WAMPO board. My question is, why was Wichita chosen as the fiscal agent?
Partly because we have served somewhat in that capacity over the past several years, but as they are seeking more and more independence as an independent agency and a legally separate agency, we've proposed this fiscal agent agreement to formalize the arrangement, and as the largest member, that the city can better afford to provide that interim funding.
And the county members? So they would technically be the largest member.
I'm not sure.
We're equal members in terms of representation. I think, as Sean indicated, though, the fact that we've done this for a number of years, it was a lot easier for us to be able to continue to do this, to provide the service, than to have the county adjust and to provide it.
But we don't get paid to do this, just reimbursed any expenses we have.
We will charge them interest. There's really, most of the other services.
Again, just reimbursed interest on our money that was given out. We're not getting paid a fee.
No.
All right.
But they're really, I should mention, Mayor, most of the other services, their payroll, their accounting, everything else is provided through WAMPO. So we're not providing any other services other than providing interim cash funding.
Okay. At what interest rate?
It's equal to the pooled funds rate that we earn on our pooled funds portfolio, or the 91-day T-bill, whichever is higher.
All right. I was thinking maybe we could set our own interest rate. All right, we'll go out. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any other discussion? I would move we take the staff recommended action.
Second?
Motion and a second. And any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Resolution authorizing participation in multi-district litigation against opioid manufacturers, distributors, and pharmacies.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. Jennifer Magana, City Attorney. This item before you is a resolution that would authorize the city to become a governmental entity plaintiff in what you've probably heard of in the media about as some of the national litigation against opioid manufacturers and distributors. The city was approached by several law firms over the past several months inquiring if the city was interested in becoming a plaintiff as a governmental entity and offering their services. Staff evaluated whether this was a process we should engage in and consider. Staff decided it was something to pursue, considered a process, and responded to the firms with a staff screening process, and that occurred. Firms presented to the staff, and one group was selected. This litigation is a national issue, but many local jurisdictions are filing, and to consolidate all the different cases from different jurisdictions, one federal judge in Ohio is the coordinator. That federal district in Ohio is the lead, or where this litigation is all consolidated for efficiency purposes, and that's what's called multi-district litigation. From the website for the multi-district litigation, this is a summary of the plaintiff's theory of cases that's common to most of the plaintiffs and summarizes what the basis in law to pursue a claim would be. And generally, it's considered the claim is a public nuisance one. There are other claims available, but that's generally a summary of how those claims would be pursued. If council decides to move forward with this, this is what it would look like. The city would join the litigation, would become a plaintiff, would seek monetary damages against multiple defendants, including opioid manufacturers, distributors, possibly pharmacies that distribute opioids, and other entities. The city would determine through staff a review of what economic damages the city can pinpoint and accurately identify as a result of the opioid crisis and epidemic impact to the city in terms of law enforcement or other services we provide. The firm that was selected, recommended for your selection by the staff screening process is led by locally the Hutton & Hutton Law Firm Group. And the agreement is a standard 20% contingency fee basis that other cities and counties have been offered by them as well. There is no actual hard cost to the city, but it's a question of how much staff time would be required to gather the records, to determine costs, and to provide documentation to become a plaintiff. So that's a consideration. What we do expect to happen is that if approved, the city would file this lawsuit as a governmental entity and would then gather that information, submit damages as a plaintiff. In the multi-district litigation, we're awaiting what's called a bellwether case, that is somewhat of a test case to proceed, to see what theories of these cases will survive and what the damages would be projected to be for all municipalities, somewhat of a test case. That's scheduled for late October. And from there, then the decisions are made by the multi-district litigation teams there, how cases like ours would go forward and how damages would be assessed under similar theories and similar damages that we would submit. There is no guarantee of a particular outcome. There's no guarantee of a settlement or of a trial verdict for the plaintiffs. But this would just be the beginning of the process. So a recommendation is, upon staff's review and recommendation, we believe that we should adopt the resolution that authorizes the city to become a plaintiff in multi-district litigation against opioid manufacturers and distributors and pharmacies, and approving engagement of the Hutton & Hutton Law Firm Group to represent the city of Wichita. The law firm group includes not only Hutton & Hutton locally, but 4 other firms, some on a national basis, some regionally. I think they work together. And I believe there are representatives of Hutton & Hutton here today if you have any questions. With that, I'm also available for questions.
So you've mentioned that we're waiting on a case that's going to happen later this year. How's that case different from the recent ruling in Oklahoma?
What I can say is the recent ruling in Oklahoma was led by one attorney general of Oklahoma only against Johnson & Johnson. I believe the theory is similar. They did not name all the plaintiffs that are involved in this, but I think the Hutton & Hutton representatives could go into detail on how those differ. I'm not sure if the theory of the case was identical, but I bet they could answer that question. I'll invite them to do so.
Yes, that's a very good.
If you come up to the microphone.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Hutton, and I'm one of the lawyers involved in this potential litigation. The case in Oklahoma was brought by the state of Oklahoma, and they had settled against all the defendants except for Johnson & Johnson. And their theory was only for a public nuisance theory of liability and abatement damages. The bellwether case that's described on the screen was selected by the presiding Judge Polsner in Cleveland, Ohio. He selected 2 counties and 2 cities of Ohio that have been devastated by the opioid epidemic to be the first test case to be tried in the multi-district litigation. And that would be against all defendants. And there's probably 14 defendants, which include the opioid manufacturers, opioid marketers, distributors, and wholesalers, and some national pharmacies.
Okay, thank you.
So oftentimes in the multi-district litigation, a judge will select a bellwether case to, quote, test the market, see what kind of jury appeal the case has. And if there is a very large verdict, so to speak, then the defendants are more likely to want to resolve all litigation. And if there is a defense verdict, then the plaintiffs tend to be a little more reasonable, so to speak, in their view of damages in the litigation.
Any other questions? Thanks, Mr. Hutton, appreciate it. Go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any discussion? I would move that we take the staff recommendation and sign an agreement between Hutton & Hutton Law Firm and the City of Wichita.
Second.
Motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Runway pavement and airfield electrical rehabilitation project budget adjustment, supplemental agreement number 4, and grant applications, Wichita, Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. John Oswald, Airport Engineering and Planning Manager. Today I wish to present to you the runway pavement and airfield electrical rehabilitation project at Eisenhower Airport. Project background, and we've been working on this project for a good 2 years. In 2016, we underwent an airport-wide pavement condition inventory, and that study found pavement conditions had changed on our 2 main runways to trigger a pavement rehabilitation project. The main runway systems, electrical systems, and signage reliability is decreasing and maintenance increasing. Over the past 2 years, the annual FAA Runway Safety Action Team identified 2 hotspot projects, pavements that should be removed to enhance airfield safety. And over the last 65-plus years, the magnetic declination has changed, and to remain compliant, runway redesignations are required. This schematic, with north to the right, Kellogg's off to the right, is the red loops show the three runways on the airport. The two parallel red loops are the focus of the project. The angled runway 1432 will undergo redesignation, which is markings and signage. This aerial plan is in more detail. I'll walk through some of the major color codes. The top parallel runway, top on the slide runway, is the runway that will receive the most work. Pavement rehabilitation, pavement replacement, electrical system upgrades, signage and marking changes. Its companion, the east parallel runway, will undergo about the same amount of work except no major pavement replacement on that runway. The third runway, the crosswind runway, which is depicted in green, designates a runway redesignation change, which is basically signage and markings. The process. All major elements of this project are FA grant eligible. We followed the City of Wichita and FA regulations, where a consultant was selected through the city's staff screening and selection process. H.W. Lochner of Lenexa was selected from the four firms submitting. Both we and the FA felt a study was needed to define the project scope and develop a preliminary project cost. The study and subsequent design went through several rounds of review by staff and FA, with significant input from stakeholders on the airport. Spring of this year, the design was nearly complete, and in mid-May, we were pleasantly surprised and pleased, notified of an FA supplemental grant for $6.66 million to do more work on the west runway, which replaced the center section, which is called the keel section. So center 50 feet is under the replacement scenario. Immediately, design modifications transpired, and we opened bids mid-August, and Pearson Construction of Wichita was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. This project is receiving 2 FA grants. Grant 78 is a little over $12.8 million. Grant 79 is a $6.66 million project, or excuse me, grant I just had mentioned, with the total grants to award is a little over $19.5 million. Project cost, project funding, FA grants is the $19.5 million I mentioned a moment ago. Local airport funding takes care of the balance, is about $2.4 million. So we anticipate at this moment in time, the total project cost is $21,877,422. This table, the next one was in your agenda packet. Mid-2017, we began a study phase. We discovered some additional payment needed evaluated, so in April of 2018, a supplemental agreement covered that additional work. Supplemental agreement number 2 in the fall of 2018 took care of design and bid services. Supplemental agreement number 3 was additional work as a result of the second grant. Today, I've been requesting supplemental agreement number 4 be approved, and that's the dollar amount is $1.729,500. Project budget, initial budget to cover the study phase is listed at $200,000. November 27th, 2018, design and bid phase services. June of 2019, the additional grant required additional design, so that third supplemental agreement is listed there. And today we're requesting $21.5 million of additional budget to cover the full construction project, the construction phase services for the consultant, and contingencies. We recommend the Wichita Airport Authority approve the capital project budget adjustment and supplemental agreement, ratify the grant applications, authorize acceptance of grant funds, and designate the Director of Airports to sign all documents related to the grants. I stand for questions.
So a lot of numbers there.
Yes, sir.
So we're still getting 19.5 million.
Yes, sir.
Just passed
The two grants, correct.
And that makes up part of that 21.5 million,
That
or the
covers-
22.53 you're asking for?
Yes, that covers the majority of that. The FA grants process, under an eligible component, FA covers 90% of the funds, the local authority covers 10% of the funds. So by calculation of all the grants we received, we're about 89.2% of the funding. Some of the work is ineligible by definition with the FA, and that's a redesignation of the crosswind runway. It's the main component.
There's nearly 700,000 in supplemental agreements. I'm just shocked why all of the pavement wasn't assessed at the same time.
Let me catch up to you. Which, are you on this side?
So either one, you can add them up or go to the 700 and some thousand and 732,600 for additional expenses for the supplemental agreements.
Mayor, John, if you could just, Mayor, one of the reasons this is on the regular agenda, not consent, is because we did not anticipate we were going to receive these grants. These are the ones that we discussed when we were in Washington. And so we did not have complete drawings done, construction documents, because we didn't know that we would be receiving these funds. John, if you want to talk about that process.
Yes, let me back up. The 78 grant, we had anticipated some funding. As the manager mentioned, recently received indication about $8 million, $8.6 million of supplemental, of additional funding was coming in grant 78. In May of this year, a $6.66 million grant was awarded the supplemental discretionary funding. So most of the funding that's listed here came nearly at the last moment of the project.
So the grant funding's outstanding. That saves us obviously $19.5 million. My question is, why didn't we assess all of the pavement at the same time?
The 2016 pavement evaluation assessed all the pavements, airfield pavements on the airport. The two runways were picked as most critical, the highest need. Other projects in the future will cover additional pavements, but the two main parallel runways were identified as the highest priority by the FAA and ourselves.
So the additional supplemental agreement that was a small fee for unforeseen conditions.
This one?
Right. That, again, you're saying we assessed all of it, we just didn't allow for all of it to be rehabilitated.
Yes, in the FAA world, pavements are ranked in priority and need. With the runways, in the FAA world, the runways have a higher priority to rehabilitate versus the taxiways. Taxiways have a higher priority to rehabilitate versus aprons, so it's a ranking system. The runways had a priority rating of 70, which made the cut for funding. We pursued the project with that understanding.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't incurring additional costs just because we forgot something.
Our capital plan is looking forward and doing future projects. This governing body has already approved a general aviation design package, and that's our next large project that's coming. And again, we talked about runways, aprons, and taxiways, and different priority system where the apron project is now under design. Hoping we're going to be successful in that project as we are in this project on the supplemental funding.
Okay. We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any further discussion? So one, it's outstanding that we're receiving $19.5 million from the federal government to bring back to our community. And then the balance of that is all paid for fees generated at the airport, is my understanding.
Yes, sir.
So there's no general taxes being spent on this. I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Approval of travel for council members Cindy Claycomb, Brian Fry, Brandon Johnson, and Becky Tuttle to attend Wichita Chambers City to City, San Antonio, Texas, September 11th through 13, 2019.
I would move that we pay for those travel expenses.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Council member appointments and comments.
Any appointments? Any comments? We're all worn out from a long weekend. Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just want to thank staff, Public Works, for the dedication ceremony on Saturday. It was great, well attended. And everyone loves the improvements on 9th Street. It's amazing over there, so just wanted to give that shout out.
We do have a executive session required. It looks like several items that are going to need about an hour of time. And we have 3 items. And I would move that the City Council recess into executive session for the first item, which is a 10-minute review of an offer of settlement pursuant to KSA 754319 for legal consultation with the city attorney, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship because of pending litigation and legal advice, and that this executive session is required to protect the attorney-client privilege interest and protect the city's right to confidentiality of its negotiating positions. The second one is, we'll round it out for another 10 minutes for something.
Review information received as part of a claim.
Oh, there you go. For review of claim information pursuant to potential litigation and legal advice, also for deemed privilege in the attorney-client relationship. It's also required to protect the attorney-client privilege and public interest. Still confused why we can't do all of these at once, but the third one is for information on Jabara Airport. Move that the City Council recess into executive session for at least 30 minutes there for legal consultation, again with city attorney, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, potential to litigation and legal advice, and that this is also to protect the attorney-client privilege and the public interest. These 3 executive sessions will exist one after another, and we will return back to these chambers no earlier than 11:30.
Second?
I have a motion and a second.
Should read them again.
My Lord. Cast your vote.
Vice Mayor, did you cast your vote, please?
Yeah. Wait, I didn't get all that. Did you read that again?
I didn't hear the second.
Motion passes unanimously.
Longer than last week's council meeting.
That's right. Yes, that's for sure.
That's right.